Morning. Morning. All right. It's great to see you today. We're going to jump right in. We have, today I'm going to introduce you to two men, Abishai and Jashabim. Common names, I know. We find them in 2 Samuel chapter 23. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, the brother of Joab, was the leader of the 30. He once used a spear to kill 300 enemy warriors in a single battle. It was by such feats that he became as famous as the three. Abishai was the most famous of the 30 and was their commander, though he was not one of the three. So, some language there you may not understand. There's this guy named King David. He was the leader of the people. He had two groups of awesome warriors. One was a group of three. These were the most elite of the elite, the special services. Then there was this group of 30. These were also really elite warriors, but they weren't part of the three, so two distinct groups. Abishai was in the group of 30, and he had to be kind of a force to be reckoned with. The kind of guy that carries a spear around with him, ready to knock out like as many people as he can. This is the kind of guy that you would go anywhere with because he's got your back, and honestly, he's clearly a little bit crazy. You know, taking on 300 warriors by yourself and thinking you can do that, that requires you to be a little bit crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I have some sturdy friends that they got my back in a time of need, but if I'm being honest, I feel safest when I got some of my just a little bit crazy friends with me. That's why I love Lynn and Revere so much, right? You know, a little bit crazy up in here. So, lot crazy up in here. So I think we're a part of the head here. Okay, anyhow. In your life, so the question here today is, in your life, how do you become an Abishai? How do you position yourself to be able to take down the giants that you face, to ward off the 300 enemy attacks of Satan on your life and still be standing? How do you see that mountain that's been in front of you for years or decades? How do you learn to climb that mountain and turn it into your surfboard and surf it all the way out to the ocean? In order to do that, you've got to increase. You have to increase your minimum. You have to get yourself ready. Tell your neighbor, get yourself ready. All right, now tell yourself, get myself ready. Okay. Crazy people talking to yourselves. They told you. You have to qualify. Somebody say qualify. You have to qualify yourself for the dream. You can all have a dream, and I hope you do. But are you willing to do what you need to do to qualify for that dream? I don't know if you know this, but those crazy people that ran the marathon last week, the Boston Marathon, they're running. They look like they're all about to die to me, but anyhow, they're all running, and they're running. You have to qualify to run that race. You have to want to run that race. And then you have to run really good for a long time in order to qualify to run that race if you're going to be one of the contenders. I have no desire to qualify to run that race. I don't want to qualify. That is not in my space. But in order to run that race, you have to qualify. And there are dreams in our lives that in order to accomplish, you have to qualify to even start it. You have to qualify. So let's challenge ourselves to step up, to qualify, and to be careful not to disqualify yourself in the process. I am disqualified to run the Boston Marathon because I'm not willing to try to qualify. So I'm disqualified. Now, in a scripture in the passage in Titus chapter 1, it talks about the qualifications for pastoral leadership or eldership. And one of the things it says at the very beginning is an elder must be blameless. And then it goes on and lists all of these things. And there's throughout the scripture, there are several qualifications in scripture for spiritual leaders, at least 17 total. And I have kind of squashed them for today's purpose into a few broad, general categories that we can learn and grow together as we try to qualify ourselves to fulfill the dreams that God has given us. So today I want to teach you, and for some to reteach you, this principle on how to qualify yourself to be an Abishai. Here, we have a little bucket. And in this little bucket, we have several staves. These little pieces of wood. They're called staves. New lesson for you today. In the cities, we don't deal with staves a lot. But these are the staves in this bucket. And imagine this bucket here. If you want a bucket to be effective and you want to fill it up with stuff, water or gold coins, whatever it happens to be, you throw the stuff in here. If you want it to stay in the bucket, you got to take care of these staves because they can get worn out over time and not be as effective as you would want it to be. And so because it's not effective, the stuff just falls out. You pour water in, water comes out, water comes in, water, and you're not actually accomplishing anything. This bucket right here looks great. Kind of like a first date. Kind of like a first date. Right? Looks good from one side, but from the other side, it's not going to hold. It's not going to hold, right? But if you want a bucket full of health in your life, you've got to take care of all the states. Like, you've got to take care of this little guy, right? And if there's just like one thing in your life that isn't firing good enough, it's not firing all cylinders, it's just like maybe this far, then that's as high as your health can go. Like, that's as high as you can get. Maybe you only get to take out like 12 enemies instead of 300. Right? That's the idea here, okay? And so you're trying to get as much health as possible with this stave illustration. And so here's a few staves for you to think about. One is a stave of spiritual health. A stave of spiritual health. In the bucket of your life, you have all of these things. One of them is your spiritual health. These are your fundamental spiritual disciplines that you put into your life to qualify in this area. Things like prayer. We have a week of prayer and fasting. Here's an opportunity for you to join together. You'll probably do a lot of it separately, but we come together for a combined purpose to pray and to fast, to seek God and His purposes in our life. Okay? So we're praying. Other is scripture engagement. This is our year of Bible engagement, and we've been encouraging you to read different passages of the Bible at different times. And so we engage intentionally with the scriptures. There's also the aspect of generosity, things like tithes and offerings. Now, every once in a while, somebody will come up to me and they'll have this great dream. They want to go change the world. They want to do whatever it is that they want to do. It's great. It's awesome. Tremendous. And one of the things that I check early with people is when they do this, I'll ask them the question, what are you currently financially contributing to help make that happen for somebody else? And if it's zero, I don't believe that person, because they have disqualified themselves from pursuing the dream. So in order to fix that stave, they have to learn to be generous, right? Stinginess is a major sign of spiritual unhealth. Sharing the good news of what Jesus is doing in your life with other people, right? That's a spiritual discipline. That's something that we learn to do. Praying for the sick to be healed, making time in your life for authentic Christian community. I'm going to teach you something right now. There are 168 hours in a week. One terrible week a year, there's 167. And another great week a year, there's 169. But in general, there's 168 hours in a week. You can't actually make time. It's somebody else has made time. And it's not you. What you can do is you can carve out time. You see, you will never find the time in your life for Christian community, ever. You have to create the time by carving it out of your schedule and then considering and treating that time as completely sacred. This is sacred time for Christian community. And that's hard to do in a really, really hot. We live in the fastest paced region of the country. Year over year over year, the greater Boston region is the fastest pace of life in the country, which means we have to work twice as hard to carve out the time in our schedule. But why is that so important? Because that's a stave issue, right? You can settle for just like a little bit, or you can like make a really significant effort at it. Next is intellectual health. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 22 says, "How long, you simpletons, will you insist on being simple-minded? How long will you mockers relish your mocking? How long will you fools hate knowledge?" It's calling us up to be better in this area of our life. Intellectual health, becoming lifelong learners. You see, the lower the level of your intellectual health, the lower the stave on your barrel. And so you can be doing great in the other areas, but that can be a weak spot, and it just pours out of your bucket of health that you're trying to build. So you're allowed to read a book every once in a while. Allowed to listen to a book if you don't know how to read. And if you can't afford a book, go to the library or borrow one from me. You can see you've got one life to live. Live it well. Invest in yourself so that you can go after the dreams that God has given you. So you can be an Abishai and take down the enemy when he comes against you. Next would be financial health. Proverbs 3:9 says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce." You've heard me say it a lot. Debt destroys dreams. Debt destroys dreams. We all understand that. Well, I don't know if we understand it. We've experienced it maybe. Okay, if we understand it, maybe we would stop doing it. Personal financial ignorance should be something that you wage war against, that you don't settle for personal financial ignorance. If your dream involves an organization, you must achieve organizational financial excellence as well as personal. This is a stave of the barrel issue. Then there's physical health. Proverbs talks about this. It says, "Worry weighs a person down." Lots of things impact your physical health. Spiritual, emotional, social, all these things impact your physical health. There's a weight to them that can hit you. Your physical health can collapse if we don't intentionally prioritize it. I mean, everything in our society fights against us from achieving physical health. But the lower the physical health, the stave on the bucket is, the harder it will be to maintain overall health in your life and accomplish your dreams. It's a constant battle for many of us. Now, as we're going through this list, perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal. We're not saying, hey, that barrel better all be full by next week. Let's make a little bit of progress. If we're at 3%, let's go to 4%. If we're at 40%, go to 41%. Just make some progress, folks. It's okay. Make a little progress. Listen, we have 52 Sundays a year. 52. If you changed 52 times in a year, we'd all be flying in here like angels, okay? I understand we don't really change 52 times in a year. Let's just make some gentle progress. Let's go towards the finish line, one step at a time. Okay, make progress, not perfection. Then, of course, there's mental, emotional health. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Stay with me on this. It says, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world." So hold that intention over here. Behavior and customs of this world. "But let God transform you into a new person." Somebody say new person. How do I be a new person? By changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Okay, we like that last part. The will of God that is good and pleasing and perfect, which requires us to know His will, which requires us to have been transformed in our thinking. If you've ever read the Bible with any level of authenticity, you have probably disagreed with it. I have disagreed with the Bible so many times. I have been wrong every single time. But you know what the process is? The process is recognizing that I have been corrupted by the behavior and the customs of this world that teach me to think and be a certain way. But when the Scripture comes in and I am confronted with the Scripture, then I have to wrestle with it and I have to engage with it. It doesn't mean I get there right away. It takes me a while. The reason I'm hoping that I can be patient with you is because I'm hoping God can be patient with me. Because it takes some time to get there. But the process is learning to be transformed in our thinking by turning our corrupted thinking into God's thinking, putting aside our street smarts and picking up spirit smarts. That's that trade-off. It's sometimes, honestly, you need a friend or a person to help you transform your thinking. You need somebody to go on that journey with you. Sometimes that might be a professional Christian counselor for kind of high-level issues. But other times, you need mentors and friends and pastors and small group leaders and just people that will go on the journey with you. You just are going to journey together. And you tackle these things head on so that you make progress. Again, perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal. We're filling up our bucket with health. We're taking care of one stave at a time. And of course, relational health. This comes down to like your choice of peers, your choice of friends. During the pandemic, we discovered that relationships are even more complicated than we thought before. Lots of relationships disrupted, lots of complicated things. If you're an introvert, if like me, you're like a super introvert, like the pandemic had a season of like being really awesome. But you know what? Introverts don't like to admit this, but introverts still need people also. Confessions from an introvert. Birds of a feather flock together, they say. They're right. Proverbs 13 says, walk with the wise, become wise. If I want to be wise, walk with the wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. If you find yourself in trouble a lot, guess what? You got some foolish friends. Hopefully you won't be one of them, and you'll learn to walk with the wise. So, in your journey to be an Abishai, find your people. Find your people, not the foolish people. Find the wise people. Proverbs 24:27, do your planning and prepare your fields before building your house. The idea here is that there takes some intentionality. Before you're going to do something great, you have to plan and prepare. So you intentionally need to find your people. Intentionally go get after your people. The people you want to learn from. The people you want to grow with. The people you want to learn with. The people you want to serve with. The people you want to do life with. The people you want to go slaughter some giants with. The people you want to take on the enemy with. Like you got to find those people. I got a lot of people in my life that I'm willing to do that with. I got some other people in my life, I'm not going there with them. Right? Pick the first, pick the wise. So, who should you be with? Abishai did this. How do I know this? He clearly had been hanging out with people further along than him. Think about that. Further along than Abishai, the guy that took out 300 enemies with a spear. He didn't just show up one day and say, like, I'm super Abishai. Like, I can take it on. I can do it all by myself. Specifically, he had a guy in front of him named Jashobeam. In verse 8 earlier, it says, Jashobeam, the Hakemite, who was leader of the three, so that 3 and 30, the three mightiest warriors among David's men. So there's guys in front of Abishai. David's men. He once used his spear to kill 800 enemy warriors in a single battle. What? 800? Abishai knocked off 300. And out of context, it sounds like Abishai is the greatest warrior hand-to-hand combat in human history. Turns out, he was a rookie. Because he had somebody in front of him, Jashobeam, to set the example for what was possible. He could dare to dream that he could go after those 300. He could dare to dream that the enemy was come chasing him, and he could stand, and he would make it out alive. So, the goal here for us today is find your Jashobeams that are in front of you and the people that will walk with you, propel you, challenge you, give you boldness to help you see further than you could see on your own. Some of you grew up in situations where the farthest you can see in front of you is like 30 seconds. You're just surviving. So you got to get some people in your life that understand how to see further, that can even see the best in you that you can't see yet. And when you're with somebody that has your calling or has a similar dream and they nail it, like Joshua Bean killed 800, then taking on to 300 doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. Oh, they got 800, I could certainly do 3. It helps you get your head around it. I grew up in a super tiny church in rural Indiana, a church that loved people and each other, but it couldn't really figure out how to be a larger church, partly because there weren't a lot of people around. So when it was time for me to intern, my pastor refused to let me intern with them. He said to me, go find the largest church that will let you intern with them, and intern there. So I ended up in East Hartford, Connecticut. It was a great church. I lived in the projects with a wonderful Puerto Rican family that summer. I ate more rice and beans in the first dinner than I had eaten in my entire life. First off, now listen, if you know my story, first off, I didn't know what a Puerto Rican was, all right? That's a true story. I was very young and very white and very rural. Second, when they put the rice and beans and chicken on the table, I thought it was the family platter, and it turns out it was just for me. It's just such a great moment in my life, anyhow. So anyhow, this church that I was interning at, they had multiple services. They had a smaller building, multiple services. They had over 1,000 people come every Sunday. And then later on, I served at Calvary in Linfield. At the time, it was just a small church. And over the years, it grew significantly. And today, it's a couple thousand people. Here's what I'm trying to teach you as the worship team comes up. A major part of the reason that as a church we've been able to grow is because we were deeply influenced by ministries much further along that have consistently grown. They are much, much further. So it was easier for me to see it. I could see it, so I could believe it. I could say, I can get there. We can get there together. Let's go. I just had to kind of tuck in behind their wake and kind of learn some lessons along the way and kind of add our unique cities to that. A few years ago, I was kneeboarding in Jamaica. And that sounds fancier than it really was, but we were kneeboarding in Jamaica, and I was not really doing a very good job. I'd get up, and I would constantly tip over into the ocean, and I was drinking more of the ocean than I was kneeboarding on. Once I learned to actually stay up, I figured out that if I stayed in the wake, like the calm part of the wake, that I could get up, and I could get up pretty easily. And then once I was set, then I could do my extreme sports moves, right? So, you're jumping out, and in my mind, I'm like doing triple flips, and I'm just holding on for dear life in reality. But I couldn't make any progress until I got in the wake. I couldn't make any progress until I got behind that thing that was in front of me. I just needed something out in front of me. Today is what we're calling Connection Sunday. And that's because we believe that we are truly better together than separate. And so we're gonna try to help out with that a little bit today. And I want you to know that at different seasons in your life, you do different things. And at different seasons in a church, you do different things. Sometimes there's a season where you go out and you're just so out. You're outward focused. Out. And you go and you get. And other times, you have to take a moment to go in and be better together. And that's where we're at right now. Why don't you stand with me as we close? The worship team's going to lead us in this last song. Then I'll come up afterwards and we'll have some. We'll pray and they'll have some instructions for you from there. But let's just close together.